what you're doing, Bob. You're getting dimensions to turn this into a dark room?
Yeah. Basically trying to imagine how this will work as a dark room, and what it does is you have a wet side and a dry side. And so over here I imagine having a bank of 4 enlargers and individual work carrels. And over here I imagine having an 8-foot long sink and counter space. And then up here I'd like to create a partition that sets back so you could use this as a shelf above the darkroom sink, which would be perfect.
Nice.
And then I'm just getting to it, but I think I'd recommend moving this heater outside the darkroom, or if you have to leave it, put a partition right here behind the heater to this area and seals that in, and that way it leaves your plumbing exposed. I'm trying to have a creative, practical sense to what's possible here. So, and how to put wiring in and lighting and how to put ventilation in. And so I'm just I'm halfway done writing basically, but I probably told you more than I've written already.
Well, and I really wish that I would have had this sooner, because I'm going to ask you again. The whole 2 things that I want to ask about is the whole art of dark room.
Okay. And I mean, like why a dark room as opposed to why a digital?
Yes.
The analogy that I like to point out to is that when Chinaware was created, it didn't diminish, but it made more valuable handmade pottery. And so with doing a darkroom, it's not quite as mass production as digital can be, but this is the archival work that creates value and long-lasting art. If done properly, a black and white photograph will last about 2,000 years, whereas digital with inkjet, the best archival rating right now is 100 years, if that, and most of them fade within 5 years. So it creates a value.
I'm going to add another story in here. Tell me just that little story about Ansel Adams.
Which part?
The part about how we do have genius and artists amongst us, and it's just the labeling right now.
Ansel Adams, as a student, was labeled a misfit, basically attention deficit, hyperactive, all the initial labels. He couldn't fit in a normal school. And one thing his father saw was that quirkiness of him and gave him a year pass to study on his own in San Francisco. And he went to the World's Fair, and he taught himself photography, and he had a passion for excellence. Ansel Adams really is the standard of photographic excellence, what you can do and become. And he was self-taught at it and an avid learner, and he had a passion and an energy his whole life for photography. So whoever catches him is a lucky person.
And then tell me too about some experiences you've had going into small communities. And
yeah, I've done artists in residencies around the United States. I've done over 360 such residential workshops in the last 30 years. One of my primary targets when I lived in Iowa, and still am in Iowa, is we go into small rural towns that are dying, and the kids in those towns can't have a sense of ownership or pride, but when they take them out to become artists and they photograph, they make their town beautiful again, and they remember it, and they can always go back to a place and say, this is what it looked like and how I saw it in a certain light, or how I saw it in textures or forms, and it helps them take a pride and ownership back in their town again. So that's one of the benefits that I see from doing these workshops.
And then you were talking too about revitalizing people, because when you go take those photos, a lot of people aren't in healthy spaces.
No, in a lot of small towns, the only thing going in a town is a small town bar slash pub slash restaurant. And sometimes when we go out with students to photograph main streets, we find too many people wasted away at 10 in the morning, and the kids photograph it and see it, and they remember it, and they say, this isn't what I want to do. And it's, I mean, there are other stories of victory besides that, so we see both sides of it.
Right.
But by photographing, you preserve it in memory.
Right.
And